Hello and welcome to Hidden Existence. My guest tonight is, well, he's a multi-talented crypto guru, Ronald Murphy. Hello, Ronald.
Hello, how are you this fine day?
I'm good, thank you very much. I'm free of the virus, so everything's cool. Don't get the toilet roll out. We'll be fine, honestly.
I'm free as well, but I think the one thing that we should point out to your listeners that we're going a little bit earlier than usual because of the life over here in the United States. They just issued a national emergency. The state that I live in is Pennsylvania, and they just declared this a state emergency as well, too. We found out that they're closing down schools for the next 2 weeks. So it's just pretty hectic right now. So I thank you so much. I work today, as a matter of fact. So I wanted to do this show so badly on a Friday the 13th. I just didn't think it was going to be such an ominous Friday the 13th.
Did you say Friday the 13th?
That's right. That's right.
That is scary stuff, isn't it?
It's some scary stuff, I tell you.
Well, look, we'll talk about Friday the 13th and superstitions like, why do we fear these numbers and why do we fear these things? But first, let's talk about you and your new series that's coming out on the Travel Channel.
On the Travel Channel, that's right.
Called
True Terror. That's right. Hosted by Robert Englund, the one and only Freddy Krueger. I will be the first show will air in the United States this Wednesday coming up, so just a few days away now. And it's also a kind of a birthday gift because my birthday is next Friday. It's on the 20th. So this is great. So there will be the 3 episodes on that day. I think it's about somebody being buried alive, about the police that arrest this person, I believe it's in Chicago, who is being tormented by a ghost. And then I think there's another guy that has a bit of bad luck. But each hour program has 3 episodes in it. So if you don't like the first one, just wait around for a few minutes and the second will come around. But I will tell you, I was quite impressed by not only the experts who they fielded for this show, but just by the graphics and the design of the show. I think you guys will like it very much.
Cool. So what are you doing in it? Give us a little bit more about.
Well, they needed a couple of paranormal experts, and I hate to use that word expert, but because we're dealing with cases that are out of history, these are out of newspaper headlines gathered around the United States in the 1800s. They wanted to find somebody that had an historical background and a paranormal background, and I kind of fit the mold right there because I actually went to college. I went to graduate school for history, and it's one of those things that I have a passion for, and I also have a passion for the paranormal as well too. So I've become a bit of a para-historian now.
That's a good title.
That's a good title, yeah, because nothing exists in a vacuum. When we talk about ghosts or Bigfoot or UFOs or anything like that, there's always some sort of lineage to them. And I think it's good to put them in a historical perspective because every generation has these things that go bump in the night, and it's kind of cool to investigate it from a historical point of view.
Yeah, it's actually the same with the superstitions. What we think they mean now, actually, years and years ago, are a completely different thing.
Yeah. What's interesting is that we, all these superstitions are based upon a time when we were fairly pre-scientific communities. Some of them stretch back to ancient Egypt. Some of them stretch to, the Nordic beliefs. But like, if you think about Friday the 13th, for instance, a couple different things could come into play. One of the superstitions is, and this is a Germanic superstition, is that there was a feast of the gods, and Loki, the trickster, from Thor fame, he was an uninvited guest, so he made the 13th guest for that particular meal, and he tricked somebody into slaying somebody. There always has to be some blood and guts in these things, especially when we're dealing with the Vikings. But so that could be one thing. But I truly think that, at least in our Western imagination, the idea comes from the Last Supper, with Judas being the 13th guest. So you have 12 apostles, you have Jesus as 13, and the one that we count, the betrayer, the 13th person. I think that makes a lot of sense. And if we look at this historically, we also have to keep in mind that this great purge of the Knights Templar, this burning time of this particular religious sect, that happened on a Friday the 13th as well. So you have all these great images, but numbers are very important to who we were. At least not so much now, but numbers at one time had meaning. So when we think of like the number 13, so many negative things have come about by that. We now see that as a negative number. But we also have, from the Bible, 666, the idea of the number of the beast. And I remember whenever I was putting myself through college, I worked a lot of retail jobs, and people would come up and their order would be $6.66, and they would buy something just simply to change that, And we think from historical point of view, the Great Fire of London happened in 1666. So a lot of these, a lot of this stuff that comes around again and again, we see it reoccurring. Also, the number 3 has great religious significance when we think about the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So one of the ideas where walking under a ladder is bad luck is because if a ladder is put up against a wall, it forms a triangle, 3 sides. So you're kind of like subverting the Holy Trinity in some way. But I think that if you would look at this from a very practical perspective, we're talking about, especially whenever these things were developing in the Middle Ages, don't walk underneath a ladder because bad things could happen. There's also a legend stating that it became bad karma to walk under one because it looks so much like how they led people to the gallows. Yeah. So there's this kind of gallows belief as well too. And then, but we think of all around the world, the Oriental, the Eastern approach to superstition. If we think of feng shui, just how to clean out all the negative energies, because this is about not bringing any kind of disaster upon yourself. So there's a multitude of superstitions in various different cultures from around the world. So I'm trying to talk about ones that, we share. But there are ones that are very, particular to like African cultures or Eastern cultures, but and the Western cultures definitely. These are all things that we understand. The idea of hanging a horseshoe, up above a door. The idea of that iron is something that can chase away bad fairies and everything else that comes into play as well. One of the problems I have though is the superstition of the lucky rabbit's foot, because it might be lucky to everybody but the poor rabbit. That's my thing. That was not lucky for the rabbit, but if you are so inclined to get yourself to acquire a lucky rabbit's foot, there's rules on how to acquire this. One of the things is you have to kill the rabbit in a graveyard at midnight under a full moon. There's a lot of weird things by this. So just don't go out there and get a rabbit's foot. There's a lot of rules required in this right here,
Apparently it's part of Celtic law that sprung from the fact that they live underground, the rabbits, and it made people think that they could have a direct line of communication with gods, is one of the reasons why people kept a rabbit's foot. So
absolutely, yeah. There's a great Greek word for that, and that's chthontic, something of the earth. That's what it means. If you can establish that you have risen from the earth itself, then you own that land. That land is a part of you. And that's very important in Greek thought. And for all really agricultural people, the Celts, are no different. And the idea that they were associated with something that could take messages back and forth between two different worlds was very important. But you also have to think about the fertility of the rabbit as well. These are all things that people wanted. I have 5 kids and I have 2 stepkids, and that seems crazy to me nowadays. I'm sure all of your listeners think that guy's nuts. But if you think that if I had a farm someplace, which I don't, but if I had a farm, it was very important to have a lot of children not only was it important to have a lot of children to work on the farm, but the majority of them weren't going to survive until adulthood anyways, you know. So the importance of fertility was something that we can't really comprehend what it's like in the 21st century, what it meant to people 2,000 years ago.
Yeah. I just want to nick back to Friday the 13th. There is a word for people who fear Friday the 13th. Do you know what it is?
Triskaidekaphobia.
Almost.
Wow. Wait. Oh, friga triskaidekaphobia. Wow.
Yeah, I know. I thought I'd leave you to pronounce it rather than me.
Yeah, well, the thing is, it's interesting because 13 is triskaidekaphobia, you know, that's the 13. Phobia is fear. And Frega, when we come about that, I think that you're getting onto something about, you know, Freya whenever we come to the Nordics thing. So yeah, that's very interesting. I did not realize that. Oh, Friday the 13th. Okay, Friday. Fear the number 13. Oh, okay, right. So that makes it good. Yeah, Friday is phrase day, so there we go. So okay, friga triskaidekaphobia. Then there you go. Boy, I like that a lot. Yeah, boy.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah, so if you're scared of just the number 13, that's triskaidekaphobia. So, but that's very interesting. I'm glad you threw that up there. And also, it's cool that you have the capability of throwing that up there.
I know. It's impressive, isn't it?
I think it's time for another sound effect.
Which one? I'm not that quick with it. I'm not that
Go ahead and pick. Just pick one.
Oh, God, this is terrible. There you go.
There you go. Wow.
That's just how good it is.
Yeah. See, they canceled all the sporting events over here in America, so that's good to hear fans cheer.
All right. Yeah. Give me a bit more then. There we go.
That's right.
Everyone's feeling good tonight.
Everybody's feeling good tonight. That's right.
And a bit of laughter. We can have a bit of laughter as well. There's nothing wrong with that.
Well, that's right. Yeah, I think that's the way to handle any kind of crisis is, you know, we are all going to make it through this, people. It's going to suck for a little bit, but we're all going to make this through it, and we're going to be better for doing it. But, you know, taking it so utterly seriously and letting it control your life, that's never a good thing. So it's good to have a little bit of fun every now and then.
Yeah. I think it's just common sense, isn't it? Don't touch things and don't put your fingers in your mouth.
No, you know, that's right. That's right.
Wash your hands and don't sneeze on people. And
that's right.
And just common sense. And
yeah,
like
I know.
Don't stop you doing what you want to do, because that would be silly.
Stop buying up all the damn toilet paper. What's up with that?
I know.
I'm telling you.
Like I said, I think they're sticking it in their ears and up their noses, you know, and just so they don't. Who knows?
That's it, yeah.
Who knows? Well, what about the when people say bless you when you sneeze?
I know. People actually believe that you were able to expel your spirit out of your nose, you know, so bless you as if you're somehow being able to put it back, or, you know, hopefully that spirit returns. But that's common in the Greek culture and the Roman culture, and of course in the Middle Ages, whenever they kind of, you know, you have this idea that, you know, the Middle Ages, when we think of the Middle Ages, we think of, you know, peasants wandering around, but this was also the age of faith. So this was a Roman Catholic doctrine that these people were working within, but they also had a lot of pagan ideas as well too, because the church could never completely drive away pagan ideas. And, you know, the idea of bless you was something that was very common, and we hear that even today.
Right. There's just a comment come up. Hi, Radar. My grandmother Lakota always told me Friday the 13th was a day when you could manifest good things. And we do hear some people say, you know, 13, lucky for some. Oh, hi, all. Hi, Hilton.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. Well, the Lakota, she's referring to a particular native tribe over here, First Nations people. I have a great affinity towards the Native Americans and the First Nation people. Whenever I was in graduate school, I got to study the cultures of a lot of the ancient tribes. Really, when we talk about Native American mythology is the wrong word, because their idea is almost like a nature-based theology, you know. And I take very much, even whenever I'm researching things like Bigfoot and all this other kind of stuff, I take the words of what the Native Americans say with a lot of weight, because these are people that were intrinsically tied to the land itself. And if, for instance, like the black cat crossing your path, that is something that we find very disdainful. But there's places up in Scotland that find that, you know, quite almost like a blessing in a way. So it varies from culture to culture. And I would be interested to know why that particular tribe finds the 13th a good time for manifesting beneficial these kind of outpourings. But I'd like to find out more of that.
Bama, BF, I was born on the 13th. Every 7 years, it falls on a Friday.
Wow. Wow. Okay, let's see. Bama, is that way? So, Bama, have you had any bad luck on your birthday? Let's put it that way.
Yeah, or good luck.
Yeah, we're good luck. That's right.
Hilton as well, born on Friday the 13th.
Oh, there you go, buddy. Yeah, see?
It's a very lucky day.
Yeah, it's what you make of it. Everything is what you make of it. If somebody told you that you were going to die today, and I'm not talking about a doctor, just somebody, you know, sometimes you can live through these self-fulfilling prophecies. And if you think something bad is going to happen, it's going to happen. You know, you're going to make it happen. Fate doesn't necessarily have anything to say about it. But there's a lot of people that go through life and say, this is my day, and they own it. And I think this is great. I think this is, and I'm glad that people are coming forward and giving us their stories too, because these shows can be so boring unless there's some sort of feedback.
Exactly. And Matt Niven, he make a good point. Luck is what you make it. Like you said, you know, if you wake up with a smile on your face with good intentions,
that's right,
you're likely to manifest or attract something good.
Hey, that's a very Buddhist idea as well too. The idea of just walking through the world and looking at everything and, you know, wanting nothing but goodwill for them. You know, that's a great idea. That's what we should do more of. Definitely.
And to be more mindful and to take in, you know, what's around us and really, you know.
That's right.
Well, you're talking about the sneezes and people saying bless you because they thought it might emit these, whatever, your soul or demons, whatever. But Russia has I don't know if you heard of this one, where it's lucky if a bird poos on you.
I did not see that. No. What? Okay, now let me ask you, what is the reasoning behind that?
It's because it's so rare. It's just supposed to be lucky. I don't know any more than that, but I've heard that in the UK as well. But when I looked it up, apparently it originates from Russia. So who knows what?
Wow. Well, I know that in a lot of cultures, the idea of augury was very important. The idea of knowing your fate from the flight of birds. And I know that the Greeks and I know that the Romans would ceremoniously sacrifice certain birds and look at their entrails. So maybe that's some sort of extension from that as well.
Right. That's
yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good. I should have a lot of good luck then, because I have been pooed on by many birds.
Yeah. I remember years ago when I was a kid, I was sat outside at home, and my mum, my dad, and my brother were all eating outside, and my dad had a sandwich, and literally the second he was about to put it in his mouth, a bird plopped on it, and that's where I remember it from, and I've heard it since then. So.
Wow. And so did your dad have good luck after that?
I guess so. You know, he's still around, so that's
that's good. That's a good thing, man. That's good.
He's 75, so he's doing all right.
Excellent.
Touching wood. What do you think about that when people touch wood for luck?
It's those gosh darn little nature spirits that live in the wood, right? You know, when we think of
it's people tap it because they feel it's some sort of security or some sort of like they have to say something, touch wood.
Yeah. Well, you know, whenever I was, you know, because I've written a lot of books on things like fairies and witches and this kind of stuff creeps up. But the idea that that the woods had this intelligence to them. It was kind of imbued with some sort of supernatural spirit that it inhabited the wood itself. And sometimes if you would knock, you would be able to gain entry into that spirit world, and it would be able to tell you the future or tell you, you know, what your destiny was going to be. These are all very cool ideas. I think a lot of that does stem from that.
Yeah. What's your favorite superstition? You know, what do you think holds, you know, the best kind of meaning?
Well, I think the idea of like breaking glass has something to do, because not only will it cut you, again, very, very pragmatic to have this idea of not breaking glass, but the idea that glass can somehow capture your soul. You know, we hear about this tradition the whole way from Romania, the whole way into, you know, America. I'm sure it's probably predominant around the world now, but the idea that the mirror can actually capture one's soul. And look, I've worked in the healthcare field for many years, dealing with elderly folks, and I know that whenever there was a death that was imminent, many families to this very day would still cover up the mirror and open up a window to allow the soul safe passage out of the house.
Wow.
Yeah, but we think of like scrying mirrors as well too. The idea that you'll be able to see your future in some sort of reflective surface. I think that this all comes into play as well too.
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard the one where if you see a hearse or a coffin, that you're supposed to hold your collar until you see an animal, a four-legged creature.
I did not know that. I did. What? Why is that?
To keep you grounded, I think. I don't know. I need to look into it a bit more, but I've heard of that a couple of times.
Wow.
I've no idea where these things come from or why. Yeah. I thought you might have heard of that one, but obviously
I've never heard of that at all. Boy, to see a four-legged animal. Yeah, that's. I want to look into that though. I'll get some answers on this one.
Yeah, that would be interesting. What about wishbones? Why do we do that thing when we have the chicken and we get the wish and we have to snap it and make a wish?
Well, because I have all these kids, that is one of the things that I'm always frightened about on Thanksgiving, is because there's going to be some sort of fight and usually some sort of bloodshed because my kids are fighting over the wishbone. Look, the actual origin of that, I do not know. As a folklorist, I can only look at other types of traditions, and it seems because the way the bone is shaped, it's very good for breaking. But the person that gets the bigger half obviously is the one that's supposed to be having more luck because it's simply the bigger portion. So
right.
But you think about this though. Look, the wishbone is from either a turkey or from a chicken, but usually a big fat turkey, which is good. So people around feasting, their stomachs were full, and what better way to hope that something like this will continue is by breaking off the wishbone. I'm sure that is probably an ancient myth as well that really had its heyday, whenever we think about Thanksgiving and such. But another thing, you'll have to have me back on the show because I'll start taking notes about all these things that I have no clue about.
Yeah, I'm actually just looking now, and they observed chickens and viewed the collarbone as a sacred part of the bird. It was Etruscans, Italian Empire.
Yeah, see, the interesting thing about the Etruscans, they had this thing where almost every part of the animal would be able to foretell the future. There is this thing called the bronze liver of Piacenza. It's still in the museum. I don't think it's in the British Museum, but I know that it's in the museum. But it was a liver. It was a liver-shaped object that was for the training purposes of their priests, so you could tell what part of the liver represented what. So that's no surprise to me at all that the idea of looking at the entrails of an animal would somehow tell you the future. So
yeah, they used to let them dry out, and then they could keep them to make wishes. And then it says that the Romans, due to lack of availability, they had to start sharing them. So
oh yes, there you go. There you go.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Very cool.
This is from Andy Gone Fishing. Are there any superstitions tied to any cryptids?
Oh, right. See, this is good. Hey, Andy, you're bringing us the whole way around now, aren't you? Well, of course, we have the idea that if you see a Mothman, that's a premonition of something very evil that's going to happen, going back to the Silver Bridge collapse in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And even to this day, people still see the Mothman. People reported it over battle zones in Afghanistan and jumping off of buildings in Chicago, and then something very bad happened. So I think that is the classic cryptid superstition. But we also have the idea of the banshee that goes back to ancient Ireland, that if you see the banshee or hear the scream of the banshee, somebody is going to die. Also, a lot of people don't think about this either, but in a lot of Native American legends, if you see a Sasquatch, that is so foreboding that that the belief is that your life is going to turn out to be no good. That's a true story. That some people think that is an ominous portention of very bad things to come for your life.
Right. That's interesting. I mean, something maybe more simpler is I don't know if you've ever heard of Wee Willie Winkie. Well, you might have done because you've got Scottish connections, haven't you? Yeah. And I know you like poems.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah, in Scotland is one of my favorite places on earth, as a matter of fact. But I think that you'll do this much more eloquently than I. Tell us the story of Wee Willie Winkie.
Well, all I know is, all I was going to say is that Wee Willie Winkie was used as a kind of threat to kids, I guess, to go to bed early. Otherwise, come knocking on your window. Now, to me, I don't get why you would tell your kids there's something going to come rapping on your windows.
Yes.
If you don't get to bed, you're probably, going to not want to go to sleep.
I've used these things before with my kids. I have tormented them with a lot of different folklores and things and boogeymen and stuff. But you know what happens is I end up having to sleep with them that night because they won't go to bed. Yeah, that's what happens. So I will not tell them the Wee Willie Winkie thing. Yeah, I will never. Luckily, I have an older child who's 18, but all my other kids are like right in that area where I can still have to sleep with them if they get scared. So I'm not going to bring that up.
Do that? No. The poem is Wee Willie Winkie runs through the town, upstairs and downstairs, and in his nightgown, rapping at the windows, crying through the lock. Are the children in their beds? Now it's 8 o'clock.
So, that's a little frightening. That's a little frightening. Yeah. 8 o'clock bedtime.
Yeah, but people would tell the kids to do that. Go to bed before Wee Willie Winkie comes. So,
and what, pray tell, would Wee Willie Winkie do to the children?
I'm not sure. It kind of feels like a Dogman situation, because I know the Dogman likes to come and knock on people's windows and doors.
That's right. And vampires and, black-eyed children. A lot of these different things have this, that is the thing. Whenever I wrote a book called On Vampires a few years ago, and one of the connections that I make in my book is the idea that the way a vampire can gain entry into your house is they have to be invited. So you'll have this constant thing of somebody knocking to let you in, And in this day and age, this is a great parallel that I made in my book 5 years ago. But the idea of allowing somebody in your house that you don't know can also aid in the spread of contagion. So when we think of like the coronavirus, we have to be very diligent, because you imagine living back in the Middle Ages or even into the early 1900s. If you let the wrong person in your house, they can bring in anything from the Spanish flu to consumption or what have you, So it's a very important thing. But the idea of something trying to gain entry into your home, that safe haven, that strikes a very primordial chord in us, doesn't it?
Definitely, yeah. These things, like you say, some of these things are used to scare us. I don't know what it is, why they want to kind of make you feel like that. But Matt makes a good point. I think this is about Wee Willie Winkie, because it's fun scaring kids.
It is. It's extremely fun scaring kids. I have a little bit too much fun with it, as a matter of fact. But yeah.
What do you think about the salt? What does the salt mean? And I'm always probably throwing it over the wrong shoulder. But if you spill salt, you're supposed to throw it over.
Yeah. Well, in the great painting of The Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci, you know that Judas in that painting had spilled salt, right? He had knocked it over with his elbow. So that goes back. I mean, that's a Renaissance painting, of course, but the idea that salt being spilled. Now, salt at one time was very, very valuable. And of course, the idea of wasting it probably was a terrible thing to do. And there was an economic reason why, you should be very careful on how you handle the salt. But then it starts getting this religious connotation that maybe Judas had spilt it before he betrayed Christ. But yeah, I mean, and I don't know. I don't know if it even matters what shoulder you throw it over. But I remember my grandmother, my mother doing that. Now, I'm not quite that superstitious. But yeah, that's another interesting one that has this kind of pseudo-religious element to it.
Yeah. So does opening an umbrella in your house.
Yes. Yeah. The way I learned about this, and I'm not sure if this is the case, but it said that it had Egyptian roots. Yeah. That the idea that the outside was sacred. This was a place of the gods. And if you would go inside and you would open up an umbrella inside where the gods cannot have any kind of weather, you were kind of blaspheming them, kind of like taunting them, because it was important that you'd have to have covering from the sun and from the rain and things. So that's probably the case. And even if it was from like an Egyptian culture, I'm sure that there was other parallel cultures that had that same belief as well, just not with the same words. So that's what's fascinating. That's one of the reasons why I do like what I do, is because I can start connecting the dots in these ideas from around the world. So there's archetypes and there's these traditions and these belief systems that really makes us a community of humanity, rather than, we're not very different from each other. We're very similar in our core beliefs.
Yeah. What's interesting is how people who maybe don't know what the history are of these superstitions put their own kind of narrative on it or belief on it, but they all kind of make sense. It's like you don't open an umbrella inside because you might poke someone's eye out.
Yep, that's right. Same way with like walking underneath the ladder, all that kind of stuff.
Brush on your head. Yeah,
that's right. And I think that practicality comes back time and time again. That we just have to, if we do not have the common sense to do it, somebody else provided us with a rhyme to keep away from this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Somebody else is out there looking after us.
Andy gone fishing again. Mistletoe, holly on the doorpost to keep werewolves at bay. Have you heard that?
I've never heard of that. You know what? And I wrote werewolf books probably about 6 or 7 years ago now. I have a lot of things like the idea of wolfsbane, to actually kill wolves. That was something that was used. But holly and mistletoe, I've never heard of that. And I promise you, as soon as I'm off this show, I am going to research that, because this summer, I live in Western Pennsylvania, so we have a very, very short growing season. We probably have until the middle of May to maybe the very end of August. Not a very long growing season, but I want to have a witch's garden in this year, and I'm trying to find some magical plants and things. Now, of course, I won't be able to grow mistletoe or any of that kind of stuff, but I was looking at different types of plants, and a couple of them that I was looking at is what was designed to keep werewolves at bay. So I'm definitely going to look into that.
Right, that's interesting.
Do you have a little computer in front of you? If you want to Google that quickly, I would like to know about that myself.
Yeah, we'll do. I was just going to say that because mistletoe's a parasite, of course, and it just grows, well, whatever will host it, I guess. Mm-hmm. But I also wonder what the kissing under the mistletoe and how that kind of thing. But I'll have a little search for it. While I do that, what do you know about birthday candles?
Birthday candles.
Why we blow them out?
I truly have no clue about that.
Okay.
No clue.
Well, that dates back to the ancient Greeks, and they would bake cakes and top them with candles, and they'd ask Artemis, the mood goddess, for a favor, and the smoke from the extinguished candles was believed to carry the message up to the gods as it rises.
Very cool. See, I am learning something from this show today.
You are.
I am learning something from the show.
You've done pretty well up to now. You've been getting through them, and I'm trying to find really hard ones for you, but
throwing me a curveball. You're I don't know. Let's see. That's a baseball term. I don't know what a cricket term is. You're cracking my wicket. I don't know what you would say about that. I don't know. But, yeah.
I'm not a sports girl, so I wouldn't really.
No.
What would you do? You say find a dime and pick it up all day? How long you've got good luck? Because we do it with a penny. We go find a penny, pick it up all day long.
We do with a penny as well too, because pennies was believed to be an element from the gods itself. So the idea of finding something that was made from this, this precious metal, this copper, that was something that was considered to be fortuitous. And then it got to the point that if you got it with the heads up, that was even better, because this kind of a divine revelation about somebody watching over you. So I do know that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was the mistletoe. Is commonly believed that rye and mistletoe would stop a werewolf in its tracks, but not kill it.
Right. I'm looking for something to kill it. Yeah. Well, I mean, the idea of kissing under the mistletoe is because that, during, whenever I talk about history, I like to be very specific, but we're probably talking about from a time, maybe from I don't know, maybe 2,000 years ago. We have to think of the Celts, and we have to think of the Picts, and we have to think of all these kind of people. So we're not talking about very ancient history, but I would say probably 2,000 years ago, maybe up until 1,500 years ago. The belief was, because the mistletoe was very sacred to the Druids, and it was believed that if an army confronted each other and there was mistletoe growing nearby, this was a portention for peace. So people would embrace and hence kiss under the mistletoe, because that would be kind of like a treaty. That was the gods' way of saying they wanted this type of conflict to stop, which I think is a very, very beautiful type of image. But the idea of to kiss, to embrace, to not have hostility with each other under the mistletoe was very important.
The rye, I go back to the rye. Apparently, the ergot grows on the rye. And I used to think that that would probably be powerful enough to repel a werewolf if it ate, because of convulsions and whatever else ergot was doing to people.
Interestingly enough, ergot is what also a lot of researchers and scholars said was responsible for the Salem witch trials of 1692. That these young ladies were somehow, poisoned by this stuff and experienced hallucinogenic visions and things like that. So it's very possible, because whenever we look at the werewolf myth from the Middle Ages, a lot of times people believe that they turned into a werewolf by ingesting something. And certainly with the berserkers, the Viking warriors, they believed they were able to transform into an animal, or to assume an animal's certain strengths by taking certain psychedelic mushrooms. And I'm sure the idea of ergot, or consuming something that had this in it, was very relevant to what they did in order to do such heinous acts in battle.
That's interesting, isn't it? There are some other plants on here actually look at, but you're going to it says mistletoe is also a good way to safeguard your home from unwanted werewolf attacks. It's not a dwarf mistletoe. Sorry, it's just filling in now. I have one quick question. When do you ever have a wanted werewolf attack? Exactly.
I don't understand that.
That is a good point. What was I going to say? Sorry, I've lost the. Why do we toast to people? Why do we toast our glasses? Why? What is that about?
You're catching me again. You're not making me look good here. Well, they don't call me the superstition guru, though, do they? They call me the crypto guru. So I'll take that. No, look. We're learning here, folks. The listeners are learning. The guest is learning. Tell me why we toast each other.
Well, it's more specifically water. Is clinking glasses with water in your cup. Apparently, that has been bad karma since the ancient Greeks, who only toasted with water to honor the dead.
Oh, right.
The idea started with a myth that the dead drank from the river Leith in the underworld to leave behind their corporeal corporal lives. This toasting tradition evolved over time into a superstition that you are wishing bad luck or death upon someone when you cheers with water in your glass.
Well, that makes sense because I do know that in Greece and in Rome, not Greece, no, I'm sorry, in Rome, there are graveyards where at the base of the gravestone, there are holes so you could pour libations in that would actually drip down into the souls of the deceased. Makes perfect sense to me. So that's a cool idea.
Yeah. I'm trying to find a more difficult one now for you. Seeing as
Well, obviously, all of them are difficult for me now.
So, well, let's go to Ireland.
Okay.
Four-leaf clover. I mean, you are quite lucky if you find a four-leaf clover. I have looked myself.
Yeah. See, I have found one before.
Right.
But so there's a tradition that whenever Eve left the Garden of Eden, she took one thing with her, and that happened to be the four-leaf clover, of course. But that is the Judeo-Christian belief. The idea of the four-leaf clover, I'm sure, has a great deal to say about the Celtic traditions as well, which I am not that schooled on right now because, of course, I like to make all these kind of connections from around the world. Do you have something more based upon Irish folklore?
Right. Yeah. The look of the Irish.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have? Yeah. I don't know what it's synonymous with or what it means for the Irish folk. Besides, they are very religious people, and since the conversion, of that great island by St. Patrick, almost everything has been based on some sort of religious perspective.
Well, the Druid priests of Ireland believe that the clovers had healing properties and could ward off evil. So
there you go.
It's the same with yeah. Now, what next? Well, let's talk about your hat.
Yeah.
We were going to talk about that.
Yes. Well, I originally went hatless, but I worked today and my hair looks horrible. Well, my hair always looks horrible because this is what happened to me. So whenever I was in high school, I started to lose my hair and I thought, I'm going to be bald by the time of 20. Never happened. But what God did to me, he played me a little trick on me. He wouldn't make me bald, but he would take it almost to the point that I am bald. So now what happens, unless I cut it very short, I start getting this kind of mad scientist look to me. So it goes all helter-skelter, or it looks as if a cat used it as a litter box and just started to kind of clod up. So I got on here and I thought, look, I'm looking pretty hot in here, but I can't stand my hair. So I thought I'll throw this hat on and it'll make me look, so the common folk can relate to me. You know what I'm talking about. But no, so what I did is I put on this hat. This was actually given to me by a couple of UFO researchers and investigators. And apparently someplace, I think it was in Arizona, there was a spacecraft that landed. And this insignia was on the side of the spacecraft. So they had hats made. And it's a very, very becoming hat. I like it a lot. But I just throw that on there and off I go.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I'm glad you just pulled back there a little bit because your T-shirt says Gravity Falls.
It does. It does. I'm wearing a Gravity Falls T-shirt.
A lot of people thought it said Gravity Kills, but now we can see
it does. Gravity does indeed kill, folks. If school taught me anything, it's taught me that Isaac Newton taught us that gravity can indeed kill.
It can, definitely.
Yeah. Do you have Gravity Falls over there in the UK?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
I'm going to go really random now. Can Squatch, UFO Bigfoot connection.
Yes. Well, I'll tell you, I am in Pennsylvania, and this is the hotbed for UFOs and Bigfoot being sighted at the same time, simultaneously. One thing happened in the 1970s in a place called Washington County, and no, not Washington County, Fayette County. And there was two creatures seen moving through a field, and one of the creatures was holding a glowing orb. Now, this is strange. It's like high strangeness. This is something you don't hear very often. And at the same time, there was a UFO spotted that came to a landing, and I spoke to the researchers that investigated that, and they said even the police report said that there was indeed a glowing circle in the field where this happened. But this didn't happen just once. A lot of people reported Sasquatches being seen or Bigfoot being seen with this glowing orb, as if it's a way to communicate or a tracking device or what have you. Some people have seen them entering spacecraft. Some people have seen them exiting spacecraft. But it's interesting around here, for whatever reason, in Pennsylvania, that we have these simultaneous sightings.
Yeah. And do you get much description about these Sasquatch? You know, you hear sometimes people saying that they can see eye shine, and then some people say they can actually see the eyes are illuminating.
Yeah.
They're not being lit up. They're actually...
That's right. Yeah, that's the problem. People are describing eye shine without any kind of ambient lighting in order to make a reflection. So what is suggested is that these creatures are actually self-illuminating their eyes, which is terrifying. And also, it's completely unknown in the mammalian world. There are animals out there that can self-illuminate, but not mammals. So, you know, what are we dealing with here? I don't know. I wrote a book called on Wildman, Tracking Bigfoot Through History, and one of the things that I make a claim to is it's very possible that things like infrasound or pheromones can allow you to believe that something is going on when it's really not. The idea that something can project into you a feeling of dread, or maybe even an actual concrete image of something. I don't know what's going on, and there are people that occasionally take photographs and you know, movies of something glowing in the woods that look remarkably like eyes shining. You know, I have never witnessed it myself. I know researchers that have, completely inexplicable. And if this creature is able to you know, self-illuminate its eyes, then we're talking about something that is outside of our knowledge of how biology works.
Yeah.
Which can lead into the alien phenomenon.
Yeah. I mean, there's just so many things that Sasquatch does that you can't, like the way it runs and moves in a very gliding fashion.
Right.
And it make no noise, and yet be £600, £800, whatever.
Yeah. I've spoke with a number of people who have said that they have seen a Bigfoot partially materialized in the woods, that they would only see like legs walking, or, you know, the shoulders moving through the forest, as if it was either being cloaked or coming into another dimension, or from, you know, from one place to another. And I don't want to outrightly discount what they're saying. It doesn't make any sense, you know, logically or from a scientific perspective. But I'm also not saying that these people are outright lying either. What people witness whenever they have these Sasquatch encounters, these Bigfoot encounters, is very personal. It seems to be unique, you know, to everybody. It never seems to be the same. But we have the idea of these creatures disappearing at will, of being, of speaking to people telepathically. I spoke to one woman at length who had one materialize in her home, and it would speak to her telepathically, and it did it for a couple of weeks, and then it just vanished and didn't come back again. The lady seemed very lucid. She seemed that she, you know, was high functioning, and she had the wherewithal to make such statements. And of course, you know, so I don't think that she was a liar. So what was going on? I don't know. I really don't know what was going on. But her claim was that this creature materialized, said that it was going to follow her over the course of a few weeks. And it was a very mundane thing. It would appear to watch her folding clothes or vacuuming, and then just one time it wasn't there anymore.
That's interesting.
Very.
I'll send you the link if you ever have time to watch it. The episode 4 of Hidden Existence. I had 3 gentlemen on who I've interviewed one on a couple of different occasions as well, and he says he doesn't understand what's happening, but he's just sharing what's going on. And him and 2 other guys have been going up to an area in Arizona, and they are communicating, they're having mind speak, healing, and they're seeing something that starts as shimmering, almost like oil on water, like predator effect. They're seeing in them as a full form, and as in also an atoms, particles, whatever you want to call
I've
it.
heard. Yep, I've heard the exact same stories whenever this thing is seen. Stop. I just had my little guy come in here.
Oh,
this is one of the problems. Yeah, my little guy who's sitting here and making raspberry sounds at me. So I don't want your listeners to think that that's me. You know, no, yeah, but he decided to come in. But yes, I've actually heard people saying that it looks almost pixelated, as if it's trying to either blend or camouflage itself, or has some sort of chameleon type effects, you know. Very, very strange indeed. But this idea of this glistening and glimmering, again, it sounds to me a lot like whenever people talk about the realm of the fairy world as well. So that's one of the things that I, as a researcher, that I try to keep an open mind about, that are we dealing with individual animals, or are we dealing with something out of the realm of the fae? Something we can talk about again sometime.
Definitely. We're definitely going to talk about it again. What's interesting is one of the guys he's a BRFO investigator for many years, 30 years, I think, if I remember. They have a very scientific approach when they're dealing with reports. You know, they're not into the woo, they're not into anything like that. And I said to him, what was your, impression of Bigfoot before you were seeing this? And he said, well, obviously it's all scientific. I would never have thought for 30 years this is what I would be seeing. So, I believe they're seeing what they're seeing, but obviously I don't know what it is.
Yeah, that's the thing. I agree with you 100%. They believe fully that what they're telling you is the truth. Now, from an objective point of view, we cannot say, because we weren't there, that what they saw is what they're telling us. Again, I get back to the idea of the fairy world of glamour, whenever they could assume a different shape. Or is this a projection into their mind, or something that's tangibly happening? You know, these are great questions. You know, when we have these kind of discussions, we are never left with a firm conclusion at the end. You know, this isn't like some sort of a lecture on mathematics, and at the end we figure out the problem and we leave with an exclamation point. We're always going to be left with a question at the end of the day. We have to keep our minds open. We have to delve deeper and dive deeper down this rabbit hole. But I have fun doing it.
Oh yeah, me too. Well, why I believe these guys is because there's three of them together seeing the same thing. It's all just, I'll send you the link anyway, and
I cannot wait. I'm looking forward to it.
It was just mind-boggling what they were talking about, and the very three sane guys, just nice guys. I talked to one a lot, and would have, I've no doubt he's seeing what he's seeing. But
yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Just send it along.
So let's go back to what you're doing next. You've got this series coming out, but what else are you doing?
In May, I will be starting. It's season 2 of something called Red Earth Uncovered. It's going to be shown on First Nations TV in Canada. It's from a grant. It's produced and acted and written by First Nations people. They're from Vancouver, British Columbia, and they look at the world of the paranormal through the Native American First Nations perspective. I was lucky that I started to appear in season 2, and we just ended up filming several episodes for season 3. So season 2 airs in May, and season 3 will be in 2021. But I will be on that show as well. And then I'm going to be doing a little bit of writing, and I'm really just looking forward to the conferences coming up. Now, I will tell you, things are not looking good over here for conferences. They've already canceled a lot. I'm scheduled in the 25th of April to be down in a place called Littleton, North Carolina, at the Littleton Paranormal Festival, one of my favorite places to be. I'm praying that it's a go, but you know, it's a day by day thing here. And then I'll be at several things in Pennsylvania, a few things in Ohio. But I'm just excited, and I hope that this, you know, this scare that's surrounding all of us, the whole world, goes away very quickly.
Yeah, me too. Hopefully it will.
It will. It will.
With it. So I'm going to put some links in the description. And you wrote a load of books on vampires, on mermaids, on werewolves, on loads more, I'm sure. What are you writing anything in another on book?
I did. I just finished my On Witches, and it's at the publisher right now. On Witches, and that will be the newest one that's out. So what I did is I looked at a different series and tried to find all these archetypes throughout the world. So it was on mermaids, on let me see, on mermaids, then on dogmen, then on wildman, on vampires. On aquatic monsters of the Great Lakes, which is really one of my favorite ones that I wrote. Then I have on fairies, and then on witches. I think that adds up to about 8. Oh, and I wrote on ghosts. On ghosts, which is that was a very difficult write. We're looking at over 300 pages on that one, and it was exhaustive. So yeah, but I try to look at all these types of things. I've also written on a book called The Unexplained World of the Chestnut Ridge, which deals with my research here in Western Pennsylvania. And I also wrote a book called Haunted Westmoreland County, which is about ghosts and hauntings here in my neck of the woods. So,
okay. How do you, when you get an idea in your head to write a book, how long does it take from... How do you do it? Do you throw yourself into it, or do you take your time and do it over months, years?
Yeah, I love to write, but I don't like to procrastinate. That's the problem. So I do throw myself into it. Oh, honey, yes. Hold on one second. See, this is my right here. There he is right there. Yeah, that's my little guy. And if we go into quarantine, he's not going to make it through. I will tell you that. but no. So the thing is, though, I don't like to procrastinate. What I will do is I'll throw myself completely into it. But what's interesting about writing these books is that I will be researching vampires and come across things about fairies, or I'll be researching things about ghosts and come across things about, so I have a massive card catalog of cross references. So sometimes whenever I write one book, I will get 3 kernels of another book out of this.
So multi writing at the same time.
It is, absolutely. And I've been doing a lot with poetry writing as well too, which is one of my favorite things as well. So I have about 3 books of poetry, 3 collections of poetry coming out within the next couple of months as well.
Excellent. Well, we'll definitely like you to come back on again, and we can talk a bit more. And
hey, I can't wait. This was like Jeopardy today. I need to start boning up more of my superstitions, so this will be good.
Yeah, I'll give you a clue on the next theme next time, and so I'll give you a head start.
I can't wait. Hey, you're one of my favorite people. Thank you so much for being so accommodating during this zombie apocalypse. I greatly appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I'm so glad you came on, and we managed to get the time right today.
We did get the time right, and also thanks to the guys that send in questions too. It's always cool to do a show whenever we know that people are listening.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you for that. My new mic. I have got a new mic, and I am quite proud of it as well. Thanks. So thank you again for coming on. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, as Ron said, thanks in the chat for the questions and interacting and welcoming Ron here on The Hidden Existence. So look, tomorrow night I'm on Researchers Report, Bigfoot Odyssey. I can't wait for this guest. It's Don Neal. He's a Kentucky Bigfoot reporter, investigator, dogman. He's a really nice guy. And I'm back here again on Sunday with an amazing guest who's had incredible, very interesting encounter with Sasquatch and other things that we will go into detail on Sunday night. So thanks, everyone. And we'll see you all soon. Thanks, Ron. Have a good night.
Hey, thank